You took your organization from 2 million to 8 million. How did you make that leap?
So I will tell you, this is the secret sauce to everything I did.
When you're taking these other entrepreneurial leaders, what's the difference maker?
I learned a long time ago that leadership can be simplified into 3 pieces.
What specific examples were you doing that others, they wouldn't even consider?
Richard Branson says, train your employees well enough that they can leave. Treat them well enough that they don't want to.
How did you find the ability to create an organization that's able to stand out?
I believe that physical discipline leads to mental discipline.
Landscaping is becoming like the new mega contractor, man.
The biggest mistake I think I've made in business is...
Welcome to Beers with Contractors.
All right, tradies, welcome to another episode of Beers with Contractors. Terry, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. How about yourself, Will?
Man, it's been a great week. As you know, I'm not a fan of sweater weather, but man, the last few weeks have been great. You know I'm a summer guy.
Oh, yeah, but it's going to get cold. You know it is, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and my job in life is to get closer to the equator as I age, so I'm getting closer. Hey, before we get started, let me just tag in. And by the way, I had to give up at just a few. We had over 43 new subscribers this last week, but I didn't want the whole episode to be recounting those. So thank you to Manny, Carrick Stevens, Jamie JJ7, Scott Purdue, Valedictorious 68, Anthony Runge, Echo, and Tony Saloma. Thanks for subscribing to the podcast. And Terry, thanks to you, a lot of those were folks interested in your real estate stuff. So maybe I need to take a little bit of a break and let you run this thing solo.
No, I guarantee you what they're doing is listening to learn what not to do because so many mistakes were made.
Hey, like we always say at the end of the show, we like to be the patron saints of screwing things up. Well, hey, I got to give you kudos, Terry, because you introduced me to somebody. And just to add some depth to our 5 listeners, I purchased a rental property from a good friend of mine, cash outright, because I didn't want it tied up in underwriting and all that. We made an Airbnb out of it, and it's been doing great, cash flowing really well. Of course, I went to my bank ready to go to cash out refinance it after 90 days. And as a bank should, they ask for certain paperwork, but because we were still working on our taxes from a just kick-ass year from last year, they just put pause on everything. And I'm like, I have every reason that you should buy from me. Like, I am a great customer. And essentially it came down to, no, we're not going to touch anything till your taxes are done. And then you introduced me to somebody. And in one phone call, just based off some circumstances, they were like, yeah, we can get this done in 2 weeks. I just need this one thing done. And it obviously was a financial statement. And they had already pulled up the property, pulled up my LinkedIn, pulled up all my businesses. And, you know, it's all relationship based. And you kind of forget that in the world of banking. And by the way, after that phone call, Terry, I did look up their balance sheets online. And I was like, oh, no wonder they can do relationship-based banking. Their balance sheets are like rock solid. They're not sitting there like Silicon Valley Bank. But you introduced me to that. And it sounds like you've been doing this for years. And you even told me you showed up to 2 closings without checks on accident.
Well, you know, in line with things that I don't do well. I mean, that's the nice part about having relationships with, I'm going to say financial institutions, but at that point they're the bank that we use for everything, but my relationship is with my lending officer. And the fact of the matter is that relationship that saved me and my wife when we got into this 15 years ago, is someone else making a phone call, having a conversation with them and saying, hey, someone's going to call you. They're going to have an ask. They need to get some financial help with a loan they need for a rental property. And what you kind of talked about is what they look at and what they specialize in is not that normal aspect, right? You take that average American family, right? The largest purchase that they're going to make is going to be their single family home. And then they're going to be paying on it for the next 15, 20, 30 years, right? When you deal with a financial institution that understands that you might be making large financial purchases of multiple single-family, multifamily, commercial properties throughout the course of a year or your life, that relationship looks very, very different. And it's that personal connection and the ability to call up the representative of that bank on the weekends and say, this is what I'm looking at. This is what I'm trying to do. What do you need so we can make this happen? That's worth everything to me. And I'm glad to hear they were able to help you out.
Yeah. And I mean, you know how it is as businesses. You got to have a good attorney, good CPA, good banker. You got to have them.
Yep.
And I don't care, even if you're be like, hey, you got to be debt free, all that. I mean, we still operate very debt free in our business, but still, we need access to banks for all sorts of things. So it was just cool to be able to submit 2 spreadsheets and feel very comfortable that, you know, in less than 2 weeks, something's going to get taken care of that was going to look like what the previous establishment was. And obviously a bigger establishment, but it's going to be like 30 to 90 days with no clear answer.
Yeah, and the relationship that you'll develop is a relationship similar to mine probably, is that whenever we go into a closing now and we're maybe either taking a check from the bank or we're having financing through the bank, they're smart enough to understand that Terry is not always on top of it. He might not remember to like bring a check associated to close. And so he just has one with him just in case I haven't crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's.
Yeah. We're judging Terry based on his portfolio, not his intelligence level. Is that what you're saying?
It's probably a much better judge.
Hey, that's all right. That's why we get along, bro. That's why we get along. It's like, hey, just judge me for the size of my wallet, not the size of my brain, right? Well, hey, listen, I'm excited for today. I know we did a little we did a little show prep on this, and we've yet to have somebody of this kind of background on the show, and super intelligent guy. So I want to go ahead and introduce our guest today. So our guest today is the co-founder of Squared Away Lawns, and this is why I'm so excited, because, man, landscaping is becoming like the new mega contractor, man. These things are just becoming so big and valuable in business. I hope to learn a little bit more about that today. So Squared Away Lawns is a specialty landscaping company that's grown just to massive sizes since 2009, has over 75 employees executing multi-million-dollar quarters. He also served in the Marine Corps as a scout observer. He's also a graduate of the Southern Nazarene University, and now graduating into this new endeavor, becoming a mentor in leadership to his new organization, Live Maverick Leadership, as well as Live Maverick Apparel. The one and only Chad McClain. Chad, welcome to the podcast, buddy. Good to see you.
Hey, well, you as well. It's good to reconnect with you, and good to make acquaintance with you, Terry, and appreciate hearing some of your humorous stories. So thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Well, now this is where we flip it. And now we just make fun of you for an hour. That's really, I didn't tell you about that, Chad. But
hey, let's go. I've had to get some thick skin through the years.
Oh, I bet so. Well, and also like that, I mean, we don't live very far apart from one another. I'm there on 178th and Western. I know we're close to one another, but, you know, just take us through the story of your background. Obviously, you came from the military, got into landscaping, now leadership and apparel. I mean, this is a broad resume. So
it's wild, right? I'll start real brief. And this was a curse, I believe, from the start. But I've always been shoved into responsibility roles from a really young age. And not that I didn't seek after them. I don't think when we're young, we want that. We want to just be free, you know? But from a really young age, I was kind of shoved into responsibility roles. And I joined the Marine Corps in 2002, just after 9/11. I was enrolled in school. And after 9/11, I just made that decision to leave it all behind and go fight a war that I knew nothing about. So anyway, I spent 4 years in the Marines, did a couple of deployments, one to a combat zone in Iraq in 2004. And then my second deployment was a West Pacific float. It's like a Marine's dream. You know, we got to go to Singapore, Thailand, Dubai, Hawaii, Australia, you know, and we only had to go into Kuwait and Iraq for like a month. So it was really awesome. Man, on my exit from the Marines, ultimately, I'll tell you, I come from a family and a military background. Both of my grandfathers are retired colonels in the Air Force. My uncle was a retired admiral in the Navy and flew fighter jets. And I enlisted not as an officer, but as an enlisted man. And so I was like, man, I'm going to get out and get my education. I'm going to go back in as an officer and I'm going to stroke this thing. You know, I'm going to freaking blow it out of the water and go to the top. And, you know, the administration that was in when I finally got my education nearing completion in 08, 09, we know the story with those years. and I wasn't as physically fit as I was when I was young and exiting. And the officer recruiter said, "No, you won't be allowed back in unless you can get a top score on the physical fitness test." And I said, "That's ridiculous. There's no way at 29 years old I'll be able to do that." And so I gave up on my dream. Consequently, I was working, while going through school as a production supervisor in a manufacturing plant, which is great experience to learn manufacturing processes and things. But I didn't really care for the way that essentially the management was leading the employees. I thought that it just wasn't, I don't know, there was some morality concerns, I guess you could say. In that, at 29, I thought, I looked around, I'll be honest with you, I looked around at the industry, the landscaping industry here in Oklahoma City. I made a real quick assessment and I said, man, this is like a junkyard. Like, this is a freaking junkyard around here. Like, and I did some math, did some research, and I was like, I think I can do it better. And I probably didn't do enough research, but I did what I did. And I founded Squared Away Lawns in 2009. As I was telling you before the show, Will, this was my first business, right? This is my first project car. When you're building your first car, like you might strip some bolts out and blow an engine and have to rebuild it. And, all kinds of trash you get in your first car. But then after your fourth or fifth, you kind of realize.
You blow the engine up several times in that first year.
Maybe explode the flywheel at 7,800 RPM. I mean, there's some things that happen, right? So, growing pains and growing a company from owner operated to senior, middle, and lower management and, the financial understanding and cash flow forecasting capabilities and blah, blah, blah. Let's just keep going. All the requirements along the way. I mean, my BSBA didn't take me that far. So I had to learn it all in real time. So, the years at Squared Away were fun. They were challenging. I had to learn a whole lot to actually be able to enter into scaling ops, because that's an operation in itself, and it's a decision. It doesn't happen by accident. You guys know. I guess it was about 2017 is when I entered into true scaling ops. I mean, we were coming up from like 2 million, 1.6 to 2, I think was about where we were. And I put a plan together, hiring plan and scaling budget and all the things. And we took it to throttle. And within 4 years, we had nearly quadrupled the size of the company, which was pretty good, because there's a lot that has to change from that level to the next.
Well, and the landscaping business is so crowded. How did you find the ability to create a culture and an organization that's able to stand out in such a competitive space?
So I will tell you, this is the secret sauce to everything I did. I mean, a lot of guys start, when they're 13. There's a lot of guys out there that have started, mowing yards when they're little kids and acquired their buddy's contract list when they were 18 and going to college. And everybody just kept stacking, and now they're 40, 45 years old, and they've got, huge portfolios, and their companies are doing great. Well, I started at 29, so I was a bit obsessive. I was like, man, I'm way past my prime. I got to freaking floor it. And so the one thing that was working for me was that from a young age, I was always in positions of responsibility. And so I knew how to care for people. And I cared to care for people. That's probably the first and foremost. And so company culture, I realized long ago that unless I wanted to be the accountability for, and just freaking holding people accountable all day, every day to do their job and to do it right and to come to work and all this trash. I mean, because in the landscaping industry, and with a lot of construction trades, so I don't want to isolate it, but you're not dealing with top tier, The laborers, some of them are just coming up, they're just how it is at the lower level industries. And so,
well, I've seen some of your employees, Chad, because we live like on the same street as your business. And a lot of them are like 20 years old. They're like 21 years old, but they're all astonishingly, they're just,
they're squared away, man.
Oh yeah. They're polite. They're courteous. They're presentable. And, they opened the door open for me. I mean, it's crazy. It's just, you took a negative.
That's what we did, man. Yeah. That's what we did. To scale, that became my focus. Aside from managing the financials and doing all that and putting plans together and systems and processes and the whole internal works. My intent became development of the personnel. And I put so much work into that team. We had company, as we scaled, the cost of company meetings also scaled. So I couldn't do them as frequently as I would have liked, but we did a bi-weekly company meeting before they left for the day. And I'm talking at 70 employees, you know, big old huge circle. I would have a topic of discussion, whether it would be, you know, a topic of something touching on our core values, touching on leadership, and touching on character. You know, just I went through the gamut on that. And then I required the departmental managers to deal with the work stuff, you know, the technical stuff. But I focused primarily on personal development. That is what set us apart, was the development that I not only put into the low-level employees, but man, when you get to the scale, you better put that same amount of intensity and energy into your senior managers to ensure they're leading your middle managers with the same mindset. You know what I mean? So we put a whole lot of gas into that, man. And that's something that I was so passionate about, man, to watch the guys like get out of the truck and on their way at 6:30 in the morning. They're there 30 minutes early. And I'm not talking guys making 80 grand. I'm talking guys making 40 grand. They're on their way to the time clock 30 minutes early, knowing they're not going to clock in, but they just want to be there. It was such a freaking, it was like effing Disneyland. Like people were smiling all the damn time. People were always looking out for each other. It was effing bizarre, bro. It was so cool. But I had to pour into that. Like watching guys pick up trash on their way to their from the truck to the time clock. They don't have to do that shit. What ended up being built was people that cared. I'll be honest, I think some of my employees cared about the company more than I did because of what it was to them. And it was like, no owner could be any more happier than that.
No.
Yeah.
You know?
There's some unique things there, though, Chad, because, you know, obviously you talk about personal development. You're talking about, you know, tying it back to core values. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen companies do that and they do it well, but to see that much excitement in an organization,
Yeah.
I mean, that's unique. So when you talk
Yeah.
about personal development into these people, what specific examples were you doing that others, including your competitors, they wouldn't even consider?
This episode is sponsored by Performance, the bonus system designed to increase profits for your construction company. Performance incentivizes your production team for more efficient installs and rewards them when they beat your preset labor goals. So no more milking the clock and no more unnecessary gas station trips. Performance drives your team to work harder and smarter. Every construction company on Performance has seen a 7% decrease in direct labor costs or more. Click the link in the description or visit performance.co to schedule your demo today. That's PER4 MANCE.co. Reward your team, retain your team, grow your profits. Performance.
Richard Branson says, train your employees well enough that they can leave. Treat them well enough that they don't want to. That's risk. That is some extreme level risk for a business owner. And that is, I would encourage these men to actually dream, to like think of what they really wanted for their futures, bro. And then show them the way to get there and teach them how to be the man that was required to be there. Well, brother, that means they could leave because they were now dreamers. They were now thinking of the future, and they were now building themselves to be capable of achieving that future.
Yeah.
And that's the secret sauce. I had to take that risk. I had to take on the mindset of, you know what, if they do leave for better, I'm going to say it was nice to have you for those 5 years, or nice to have you for those 2 years. And I will give you a hell of a reference on the way out the door.
Yeah.
But it never effing happened.
Yeah.
So we had like landscaping companies are like turnover city, like so much turnover, man. And the only turnover we had were the ones that we had to let go of because of, you know, lack of integrity or, you know, something like that.
This is interesting because I love this concept of like dream management, intentional leadership. And I don't know, did you run into this, Chad, where it was like, hey, like, what do you dream about? What are you passionate about? And then like you get met with crickets, like they were just,
Man.
if there's owners out there wanting to do the same thing in their organization,
Yeah.
my fear is they're going to hit that mark and be like, oh, this doesn't work for me. But I know that it's not just a one and done thing. Like, how long did that take you with some of these guys?
I think it took me being a man that they would trust to be vulnerable with, you know? Because dreams are vulnerable, man. You don't share that shit unless you trust that person. And I didn't have like personal relationships. I had a ton of employees, you know? But I went to work, really, man. I went to work on me many years ago and just haven't stopped. And I tried to be the most trustworthy man I can be. And I don't try it in action. I try to do that by my decision making in private and in public and everywhere I go. And I guess what that has done is it's allowed my employees to actually trust me because they feel that they can trust me. There's no shadiness lurking to eat them, you know? I think for any business owner, that's what we have to do. You know, I think we have to become the effing man. If we want to be able to lead, I think we have to become that guy that they can trust, you know? So I think that was, for me, that's what I did. But in regards to what you said specifically, like you said, crickets, I think so many people are so scared that they don't even want to dare to dream because the pain of disappointment is real in a human's life. Like, dude, I would rather not dream and never face disappointment than dream and never achieve, right? It's worse, so worse. Like somebody says, hey, you know, a girl says, I want you to take me on a date on Friday. And then on Friday evening, she calls you and says, F off. That sucks. It'd been better if she never effing called you, you know? So some of these people, they don't want to dream at all because they're scared that it won't be achieved. So you got to back it up with, hey, I want to help you get there. But you're going to have to quote. This sounds real cheesy. I'm going to tell you something. All right, I'll tell you something. All right. In my interview process, this is how I aligned myself with people that were growers, that were willing to grow with the company. I had to align myself with those people. Because if you align with a steady or an anchor, you're not growing. You have to align with growers to grow the organization. And so this was my litmus test. Sometimes people were like, I'm not doing that. Can I cuss?
Yeah. Oh, you already, don't worry.
Right.
We're not like NC-17 here. Yeah. And if it gets bad enough, we'll have Drake leave you out. You're good.
It won't get too bad. But, you know, I would ask these people to close their freaking eyes. I'd be like, here's the deal. You're going to think I'm crazy and I don't really care. This is a prerequisite for me to be able to hire you or not. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to tell me where you see yourself in 10 years. And they're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to simplify it for you. I want you to close your eyes and imagine you're driving home from work. What are you driving? And they might be in a beater. And they're like, oh, I'm in a F-250 King Ranch. And I was like, what does it smell like? And they're like, oh, I can smell the leather and all this. And I'm like, is it brand new? Like, yeah, it's brand new. And I'm like, what are you listening to? Like, I encourage that thought, you know? Mm-hmm. And in the end, like, I will get to the place where I say, okay, now you're turning down your street. Are you in the country? You in suburbs? Where are you? In downtown? Where are you? And they would always know, bro. They always freaking know. And they're like, well, I'm in the country. And I'm like, you turning on a gravel road or is it concrete? And they're like, oh, it just depends, you know, whatever. And now you see your house. Do you see it from the street? You know, someone say, yeah, whatever. Someone say, nah, I got a long driveway. And I'd make them describe their freaking house, bro. I swear. And then I take it a step further. I'm not bullshitting you guys. This is crazy, but this is the shit right here. And then I make them tell me, what do you see when you pull up to the house? And they're like, man, I got 3 kids in the front yard playing the sprinkler. My wife's sitting on the front porch and drinking iced tea or some shit. She has a cold beer waiting for me or whatever. And I'm like, all right, now you go in your house. I was like, what does it smell like? And they're like, dude, it smells like chocolate chip cookies. And, you know, there's dinner on the stove and all this shit. And I'm like, now, do you have the courage to make that shit happen? And that generally would inspire them enough to go, yeah, let's go. And then I know I've got a freaking driven employee that's willing to do what it takes because he had the courage to throw that dream out there. And I'm committing to ensure that my organization will continue to grow, that if they choose, that it can accommodate their dream if they so choose to become the man required to have that, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's what I did.
Yeah, but that's powerful. But all it is words and actions, right? I mean, you're just combining all the senses. You're also probably giving them a little bit of sensory overload, Chad, because obviously you're incredibly out of shape. You know, if they're staring at you, it's like you need to close your eyes so you don't feel. By the way, that's a compliment, bro. That's a compliment. By the way, Chad, love
This
it.
is great.
This is awesome.
Thanks, man.
So, Chad, you took your organization from 2 million to 8 million. How did you make that leap?
So this is crazy. I'm going to have to dust a little faith in here. Okay, gentlemen. So
You're
don't be
welcome
offended.
to do it.
All right. I have to, because it's part of the effing story. All right. So, man, as I'm working on me, right? Like I'm freaking putting it into work, man. Like I'm really trying to be a freaking good human, and opportunities started falling into my lap, man. Like just falling into place. The big swing that really just propelled us forward was an acquisition, but it was a merger. It was an acquisition and we merged. So that's when we moved. We were at Wilshire and Rockwell in an undersized facility there that had no nursery, no greenhouses or anything. We got an opportunity to purchase out a 25-year, a very reputable organization. And we had very little time to do it, but I'd never done this before. I never freaking acquired a company, guys. I'd never merged two equally sized organizations, and I had to get it all meshed, even though one of them was operating as a 25-year owner-operated organization with no management structure whatsoever. And mine that was digitized and streamlined and, systemized and all this. And I had to get that onboarded. So we did acquire a company late 2020.
So you talk about mergers and acquisitions and that taking you to that next step. I mean, what's one lesson that you learned from that? And then in looking at that, during this process, were you nervous? And how did you understand to overcome that nervousness?
Those are both very good questions. So yes, nervous as hell, but I've always been really good at math. And so the math, it all checked out. The acquisition was well funded by its profitability, by the acquired company's profitability. But now I'm operating a company twice its size overnight, and I'm the guy. And everything changes, as you scale an organization and it happened overnight. There was a lot of early mornings where my CPA didn't have our 2021 budget uploaded to QuickBooks. So I had no financials to make decisions by. And, there's mornings where I had to get to the freaking office at 3 a.m. and pull out subsequent year P&Ls and build out my budget and do all this cash flow forecasting, all this stuff myself. I'll be honest, it was freaking hard. And there was so much. No, it sucked. All right. It was really shitty.
There we go.
It was so shitty, bro.
Dude, it's like proctology.
The stress, man, when you're laying in bed at night and you got so much effing anxiety that you can't stop your foot from fucking shaking. Yeah. That shit was every fucking night. And I had no choice but to get my ass up in the morning, sometimes earlier than I wanted to because I couldn't effing sleep, and go to work and freaking build my teams and focus on what was in front of me. And we did it, man.
Well, by the way, those transitions do suck, and I'm glad you just call it what it is, right? Because I've been through those, and they're like gruesome. They're grueling. Well, Chad, I know you're physically in shape. Like I've ran marathons, and it's like those suck.
Yeah.
But I would rather do those all day rather than going through a massive business transition. Hey, I do have like a side topic there. Like so you wanted to grow the company. You decided to grow it through some mergers and acquisitions. And then I know there's a later chapter, but what were some of your finance options in trying to finance all of that? Like when you went through that merger and acquisition?
The way that it had to be for us, because paying a high level of interest was not something that I wanted to do, my God. And an acquisition, if you don't have cash or the full value of cash, you're going to lose your ass. Pardon my language. So we actually worked out an owner finance agreement and with a commitment to finalize the full acquisition within 36 months.
Yeah.
We came in with a hard stroke and we went strong, and we were able to actually pay him down significantly the very first year. And then we wrapped it all up into one big note at the bank and cleaned it all up, bought him out completely, let him go on his way to retirement, and just finance the remaining balance. That's how we did it. But, in a business deal, you got to get creative. I mean, somebody wants out, right?
Yeah.
And somebody wants in. You guys, you have to make it work for both parties, and it has to work financially for the organization, because some owners, they want all this shit, but their company won't afford that shit.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, I know what you think it's worth, but it's really not, because it can't pay that,
Yeah.
Well, and we saw so much of that in home services back in 2020 when we were flooded with capital.
Yeah.
That a lot of companies just went credit crazy. So I think it's insanely smart that you executed like a seller finance deal. And I hate it when people say pain point, like the seller's pain point is this. It's like, no. It's got to be a win-win-win, right?
Yeah,
Win for the buyer, win for the seller, win for the organization, which
Boom.
dovetails perfectly with the next one, because you built this kick-ass culture, and then now you got to take this other culture and bolt it in. Like, what was that transition like? Was it a train wreck?
My gosh. Well, it tried to be. It tried to be. So we're talking 18, 20-year employees with one organization and a bunch of freaking noobs, really, in a very young organization. It took a while for them to learn that we were a trustworthy organization.
Oh, yeah.
But we came in, they were all underpaid. They were all underpaid of the acquisition, and because they'd been there for so long, and the ownership probably just out of sight, out of mind, hoping they don't ask, kind of a deal. We had to get them up to our salaries because we couldn't keep them at their rates when they're working with a guy at the same position, who's making 30% more. That was significant. And so we adjusted pay scales right off the bat, and we gave them more benefits. We gave our leadership, vacation pay and all the things that we already had established that they never had before. So in this sense, it was like we had something to give, And so initially they were like, I'm not going to let somebody else work on my lawnmower. And I'm like, well, you don't have a freaking choice. Like, you got to fill out this work order and you got to drop your shit off at the mechanic shop, and it'll be ready the next day for you to put back on your trailer at the close of business. And that's the way it's going to be. And, so there was a lot of fighting them with that, because they still wanted that control or felt that they needed it. But we delivered a result that they were like, eventually they were like, damn, this is nice. Like, are you telling me all I have to do is get here and do my job? Holy shit. So we had a lot to offer, but it took them a while to trust it. They didn't want to wear the uniforms at first, and we had to have a little bit of leniency for a few months. I mean, they would show up with the old company logos on, and I'm like, yeah, you guys are being assholes, but I'm gonna play it cool, and I'm gonna give you shit nicely, and I'm gonna win you over, and ultimately you're gonna be wearing this effing brand. I'm gonna effing win, but right now I'm gonna let you think you're winning.
Yeah.
And so over time we got it, and we didn't have anybody leave. We had nobody leave, man.
That's
really
a
cool.
That story right there, man.
But Chad, like you talked about investing in your people from the start, right? And so you're building individuals up, you're getting them trained, and you have them bought in. So when you went to expand and you merged with this organization, it wasn't just you selling the brand. You had a team behind you that had bought in, right?
That was already, they were already like squared away lawns, let's go. They were already geared for the company. So they helped sell it. You bet. But that's what I feel like, we want to do with our clients. We want to create raving fans, right? With our clients. We damn sure better do that with our employees.
Yeah.
So in regards to that, when you had this acquisition, Chad, you obviously had an influx of overhead because you had to increase everybody up to where they needed to be. How difficult was that when you normally go into an acquisition expecting that kind of thing? Was it a big surprise to you? Or did that happen before
It was
the fact
a
or
big
after?
surprise, Will.
Yeah.
It was a big surprise because especially it was my first. We overspent in the merging of the teams, and we underestimated. what was actually going to be financially required to get it done. It was stressful. Cash flow was really, really tight, but there's a solution to cash flow, and that's sale. We know what the solutions are, but it doesn't make you feel any better when cash is tight as hell, especially when it was unplanned, but then you got to go to work and you got to sell.
So once you made that acquisition and you basically you doubled the amount of capacity that you could have, right? Did that cause you to look at another part of your organization and say, all right, I need to start building here. I need to expand on this side of the sales?
It sure did. That's one thing that we had not built was a sales team. So our managers were salesmen. That's trash. I learned that it was trash, but when you're scaling a company, you do whatever you got to do. There's 2 hats and 3 hats. So ultimately, yes, our designers were salesmen, but that was again another kind of a little bit of a flawed program as well, because designers are like musicians. They're not salesmen. So then you had to have somebody else go in, and on a big ticket item, you'd have to have a senior manager follow up and close the deal, because the designer was just wanting to talk about their dogs and shit,
Oh yeah.
and be,
Yeah,
and be all friendly,
Yeah.
they're not getting it done. No, close the deal, start the process.
This is powerful, because this is like, I look at my business like departments: marketing, call centers, sales, production, service, even accounting and HR. And
Okay,
like
that's
each
good.
requires its own skill set. And I guarantee you, and I'm just going to need you to repeat it again just for good short form content, Chad, but it's like in landscaping, no, sales needs to be a sales division, right?
100%.
Yeah, and expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and sales requires a level of confidence that not everyone has. I mean, my gosh, to be an effective salesperson, you've got to not give 2 shits about it, what anybody thinks of you. There's a lot that you have to become to be an effective salesperson. Like I said, we tried with our designers. I learned very quickly that as much as even I tried to develop them into those people, they were probably never going to become that. And so, they're like, I consider like a designer. I mean, you guys have probably worked with interior designers and all kinds of designers. They're like a different breed, man. They're like musicians, and they're like, oh, freaking thinking of all this stuff everywhere, and they can't focus and all this trash. I had the hardest time trying to get them to close deals. And I learned that, sales is an art all on its own.
Yeah, it's less about wondering what's going on and more about action. Like, what are the next steps we need to get this scheduled?
But on to that other side of that coin, you take that salesperson, right, and you ask them to design something that's going to inspire that homeowner to spend the next $30,000. They're gonna be on the struggle bus, something real.
Yeah, you got to have a team, and in order to put the team together, you got to have a scaled company. So that's all the process as you scale a company. It's chipping away at the most vulnerable thing and fixing the next thing.
So you find that next weak link and you focus in on that as much as you can.
Yeah, you bet.
This growth has led you to be able to sell your interest or your shares within the organization. Would you talk about that process and what it was like for you?
Well, I thought it was going to be a blessing, and it was to a degree. To be free of the burden of responsibility was a great blessing, but I guess shock factor of not having the weight of that responsibility, I don't know. That makes sound super weird, and I can only describe it like, so you guys have probably hiked with a backpack or something before. You put that 50, 60 pounds or 40 pounds, whatever you're rocking, and you get used to it over time. Maybe over a couple of hours, you get used to that weight. And then when you take it off, it's like, whoa, you feel like light, it feels weird. Well, once you've worn that pack for 14 years solid, you take that heavy ass thing off and it doesn't feel good. It feels uncomfortable. That's how I experienced it anyway. It felt uncomfortable. I mean, that's the standpoint I'm going to discuss on this is, I don't think I was prepared to be a free agent. I wasn't prepared. I needed that structure of running the company. I didn't know what I didn't know. And it took me a little while to kind of restabilize, because no longer did I have a need to get up at freaking 5:30, you know, no longer did I have a need to execute every day.
Well,
You know?
you stepped away. I mean, you made the decision to sell. So, like, what
Right.
brought you down that path?
Yeah. I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it because I want to be honest. I lost my passion for the trade, for the industry, no longer was it satisfying enough to talk about trees and shrubs and grasses and boulders and things like that. What satisfied me was completely different. It was watching people succeed in their roles. That was where I love. That's the shit I love. I knew so much and I still know so much about the landscaping industry. My God, like I can freaking, it's super easy now because I know so much, but I don't want to be asked those questions. I don't want to be asked industry questions. I'm over it. I'm over that. I don't want to talk about industry questions. If we're talking about big business and, scaling plans and systems and processes, personal development, leadership coaching, that kind of stuff, let's go. But I don't really want to talk about why your bark is coming off of your freaking autumn blaze maple. Like, I really don't. I know why, but I don't want to. There's plenty of other guys that's their thing, and it's not my thing anymore. So really, I lost my passion, and I think that's dangerous. I think when a business owner loses his passion for the trade, you can step out and piggy bank it, for however long, but I don't think the company was at the size to step out and piggy bank it, So it just needed to be, my shares needed to be sold.
I mean, you're obviously a very passionate individual, and my expectation is you move into anything with passion, right? You're not going to do anything half-ass.
Yeah.
So you stepped into Live Maverick.
Right.
And is that something that you developed? Did you step into that to fill that point?
After I did. So, this is wild, but a teacher's not good without students, right? Like teachers, like, if I have no students, like, who am I? Like, if you're a teacher, you gotta have students. And if you're a leader, you gotta have someone to freaking point on the trajectory and encourage them along their way. So if I don't have that, I don't have shit. I gotta have that. And I only have a daughter, one daughter. I have one child and a wife of 21 years. That's not enough leadership. I lead my family as a husband and a man should, but it's not enough. So, I realized that here's the other thing I learned. Okay. So back in the late, 80s and 90s and 70s and hell, throughout the whole last century, we had like journeymen and we had apprentices, freaking these old guys don't give a shit about the young guys. They don't want to learn. They don't want to teach them, because they say, oh, this young guy is worthless, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he's worthless because you don't freaking teach him, dog. He's worthless because you haven't freaking had the humility to freaking show him how it's done. So I see all these young guys out there, man. I see all of their mentors. And you know what? They're all on effing Instagram and TikTok. And they're not real. They're not real.
Oh, gosh.
They show this bullshit facade, and it's bullshit, man. So I started coaching a few small business owners, and I was like, this is what I need to do. So my wife and I were on a vacation. We took like a month off, man, and went to Mexico after I sold we did 30 effing days, me and my wife and daughter. We just lived down there for a little while. And I knew that I was going to need some time away to figure out what was next, what I wanted to do. I'm only 43 years old. At the time, I was just turned 42. I was like, man, this is what I'm passionate about. This doesn't generate a ton of profit, right? It's a passion project, but to generate a lot of profit, it has to scale, right? I don't want to be an attorney. I don't want to work for $300 an hour, even if it is $300 an hour. I don't want to work like that. And so I put together, that's where Maverick Companies effectively was born. I was born out of building an organization that teaches a young man, and the word Maverick, guys, it's like live free, live independent. A Maverick is like able to stand on their own for principle. They're able to pioneer their own way without needing anybody else. Like a Maverick is a pretty independent mindset person, and developing that character traits in young entrepreneurs, I think is something that has a whole hell of a lot of value. because I see a very big need for that. That's what we transitioned into. And I say we because my wife is a pretty good partner of mine.
Well, anyone who gets up in the morning and is passionate to go out and take on that next job, responsibility, next step in their organization. I mean, if you get up and you want to do what you're doing, you are so lucky because there's so many people out there who just get up and they have to go punch a clock.
And I know, look at it, Terry. He's outside on the podcast, and we're stuck in the frickin' office, bro.
This is great out here, gentlemen. The wind is hell, but I'm on a north wall. I got a north wall right here. So
Nothing says more live free, live Maverick than being like, I'm on a podcast literally outside in beautiful weather, and you two dummies are sitting in an office strapped up with headphones and lights. I love it.
Oh, man, that's great, man.
Well, Chad, listen, I got to tell you, because it's one of those things where I know what that entrepreneurial kind of out to pasture feels. You know, I went through that where it's just kind of like you lack purpose. So the fact that you transitioned into, this leadership development thing, which you were already doing with your employees, right? And now you're doing it with other business owners, which has a much more multiplying value in the local community. So, like, you are already helping people that you and I both know. I think of Brander Gramero from Revival Concrete, great people. Like, so what's that journey been like? Just getting engaged and getting business owners fired up now, and also how can they get a hold of you? Because this has been powerful.
Yeah, man. So I tell you what, when a guy calls and they're struggling to make a net profit, or they're running their ragged, working 65, 70 hours a week, and I get to kind of take them under my wing. And first of all, I do a little bit of mixed coaching. I do personal development and business organizational development. It's all at the same time, you kind of got to do it together. The return has been so satisfying to watch these, and I say young men, I'm not old. I don't feel like, but I may be a little old. 43 might be a little dusty. But
Terry, we're all in the club, bro.
You're good.
We got it. Oh, we're good.
But man, to watch these guys just really to watch them become men of character primarily, first and foremost, and then men of confidence and competence. Those three things has just been super rewarding. With any new venture, any new startup, it's, you got to work at it for a long time before it's really paying the bills,
Oh, yeah.
So that piece is all give right now. It's all give. I'll tell you a little bit real quick. I don't know how much time we got, but
we are good on
short.
time. We are good, Chad.
Okay. So I learned a long time ago that leadership can be simplified into three pieces. It's a person has to be inspired before they're going to follow. And then they have to be taught once they're inspired. Like, you can't light somebody on fire and just send them, so inspire them. And then you got to teach them what they need to know. Well, then you've got to hold them accountable to what they've been taught. Right. And that to me is the very simplified, anybody can do it if they understand those three principles. If you can learn to inspire someone, if you can learn to teach someone, and you can learn to hold someone accountable. Now, we won't get into how much is actually required to do those three things, but we'll just keep it simple. That is what we have built the structure of Maverick Companies. So Maverick Companies is effectively Live Maverick, which is our apparel line, which is designed to inspire people, okay? And we're developing much more than just graphic tees and tanks and hoodies. We're doing a lot more with a Maverick Fitness line, Maverick Essentials line, and then what we're calling a Maverick Legends line, which is going to be nightwear, and we're going to have what we would consider influential Mavericks that are working with us to develop their own line beneath the Legends line. Super neat. Cool. That's a freaking profit center, man. Apparel's the profit center and the inspiration tool. So that's the first step, is to be inspired. The second step is to teach. So under Maverick Leadership, I've partnered with a very, very effective personal development and business coach that's been doing it for nearly 25 years, and we align on principles. And he's built out a program called Project Maverick. Okay. And he's been working on this for nearly 2 years, and we just kind of synced up, and it's pretty neat. It talks about spiritual foundation, mental toughness, emotional self-control, and physical fitness. and all those things, packaging them together and teaching them in one program. But aside from that, we're also building a network of coaches and consultants in every niche so that we can be a hub for anyone that's needing consulting that's really in leadership or entrepreneur roles, you know? And then the third piece, the shitty piece that nobody loves, accountability, right? We all hate doing it. It all sucks, but we got to do it. We're not following through with leadership. So we also have what we call a Maverick mindset group, which is community mindset group. So we've been hosting those for about 4 months here locally, but we plan to expand that into other markets as we expand the organization. And we've got a great group of guys and we hold them accountable to what they're being taught, you know? And we're seeing some major impacts. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And now, Chad, I'm going to get to our last question, which we go over with every guest. As many people that know me and Terry now, we're the patron saints of screwing things up. So, hey, what is a good, mistake you made so bad in your past career that, you can at least brag about it and help somebody out there? So I'll let you take it from there.
The biggest mistake I think I've made in business is, I like to call it, it's something I learned in the Marine Corps, and that's prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And prior proper planning will save your ass. And I did not always, as a Maverick, I have not always properly planned, but I have learned to do things much different now. And I can go as fast as I want, so long as I take the time to build the plan first.
Hey, Terry, listen, as my co-host, I need you to listen to what he just said, sir.
Oh, trust me. Well, I'm ready. I'm good at picking up the slack. Trust me.
Yeah, you are, buddy. Well, Chad, listen, you are such an inspiration, not only to the trades folks of the world, the contracting world, but now as a business leader of the world. Like, how do people get a hold of you? I mean, this is huge what you're doing.
Yeah. So you can find us on social media under Live Maverick on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, but even more so to get a hold of me and us directly. You can go to www.livemaverick.com. That's our main domain and website. And furthermore, anyone who's listening to this podcast, I'm going to give you access to my email, and it is chad@livemaverick.com. And we're looking to help as many people as are ready to go, But I guarantee you, like, you enroll, you do something with us, and you're going to see exponential results. And so you've got to be ready, because it's no bullshit. We're not messing around.
Yeah, well, I tell you, man, I'm already seeing the results from our mutual friends that are a part of your organization. I'm super excited about it. I'm excited to even see the evolution of it on social media. So the fact that I caught you before you get wildly overwhelmed and that backpack becomes really heavy again in this new winter,
I know.
I'm excited. And then, Terry, make a note that we have to do the next podcast outside in warm weather. And why the hell are we tucked away in our studio?
Beach in the background. I think that's the way we need to be seen.
That is it, bro.
Call me on that podcast, gentlemen. I will fly to the destination. We can do it live.
Wait, yes. And we'll bring Drake with us, too, even though.
I think as long as he's
coming,
we're good.
all I'm hearing is business expense, and I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's like the old Seinfeld joke. It's a write-off. Well, what does that mean? It doesn't matter. It's a write-off, right? Well, Chad, I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you're doing. Terry, I appreciate you. I know it took some jabs, but Drake, I appreciate our producers and our subscribers out there. So if you are listening, please work with our sponsors, of course. And otherwise, next week, we'll see you in another episode of Beers with Contractors. Thanks, everybody.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field And be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.